What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So November is come and gone once again. We score a big fat 0 in the win column, and heading into December, no playoff hopes whatsoever. It's generally a mixed feeling kind of season, right? Pissed off because of whatever's happened. But then again, you start to kind of get that hopeful flicker of light. You start thinking about draft season. For guys that still care about anything going on in season, you start thinking about some of these guys from the practice squad, maybe second, third string players that haven't gotten reps with guys that are terrible in front of them, right? And we may have an interesting situation here because the safety position was one of the ones that we figured, between the safety and linebacker room, we probably thought would potentially be the weakest, right? And we've seen our linebackers go on to be one of the top duos in the NFL. Meanwhile, at the safety position, I know personally I whiffed horribly. Everything that I was seeing and hearing from Tony Adams in the offseason, I thought he could finish as a top 5 safety in the NFL. It was a far cry from that. He hasn't been terrible like LaMarcus Joyner, but he's been about average to maybe above average depending on certain categories, stuff like that you're looking at. But definitely a huge upgrade from what we saw last year nonetheless. And keep in mind, he still has less than 20 games of experience, I think it is, overall, or he's at least within that range, right? So still a lot of room for improvements to be made. You take a look at Jordan Whitehead, though, his trajectory has not been so great, right? He's had some massive games for us, some pretty huge plays, but overall, he's been consistently negative when you take a look at some of the miscommunications that have allowed touchdowns. Not always in critical situations per se, but definitely very annoying when you get into the red zone, considering Sauce Gardner seems like he has his head screwed on right. That's generally who he ends up being aligned with, and it's the same kind of plays that he falls susceptible to, right? A player runs to the flat, one guy probably runs a hook or a curl route, and it gets screwed up. Somebody walks in for an easy touchdown. You add in the missed tackles that Jordan Whitehead has racked up over his few seasons with the Jets while trying to lay the wood on everybody. And it's, he's a strong guy, but it's not like he's consistently blowing people up. It gets very annoying very quickly. So the question is, heading into next year, the safety room again would be you can look for an upgrade for, and we might already have one on the roster. This coaching staff has been patient with players almost to their detriment, but if there was any, on the defense specifically, since this is a coaching staff's bread and butter, if you were going to feel confident that somebody can turn their career around, it would be in this defense. They've done that with Ashtyn Davis, right? He spent his entire rookie contract with the Jets. We've been asking for him to get cut, it feels like, since his sophomore year, and we're finally seeing very, very strong play from Ashtyn Davis. I mean, I was trying to find it again, but I know that he was one of the few defenders in the league that has racked up something like at least 2 touchdowns, 2 fumble recoveries, or 4 takeaways, somewhere in that vein. You guys will see the graphic there, but he's made huge strides, and what's impressing me is the minimal amount of opportunities that he's been doing it in, right? So this is a argument for Ashtyn Davis potentially getting Jordan Whitehead benched, getting some time as a starter, and seeing if he can be once again either a very strong depth piece for the New York Jets, or if he actually brings some starting level ability now, but it's going to take more opportunities for him to do so. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these specifics when it comes to this, right? Now, you talk about Ashtyn Davis again, mostly being a special teamer. So this is a guy that has really kind of grinded his way and went back to his college roots as a walk-on into developing himself, right? Flight school, etc., right? But generally, in terms of game experience, there wasn't going to be a whole ton of opportunities there for him. He's been a core special teamer for us. Even this season, he's only had 121 snaps so far, but he's impressed quite a bit. And a plus that he already has on his end, which you have to account for the fact that we played some more combo safety packages, getting 3 safeties out there on the field, which has opened up some of these opportunities for him. But he's been a little bit more versatile in how he could be deployed as opposed to Jordan Whitehead, where he's already playing more at the outside cornerback spot as a box safety and in the slot than what we've seen with Jordan Whitehead, who's played a little bit more out of position, playing free safety quite a bit, but still something that you kind of somewhat expected to be on his resume. So with Ashtyn Davis, well, let's jump into Jordan Whitehead first, right? What's the ins and outs of what's been going on with him? So far, 8 touchdowns in coverage this year. Keep in mind, we still have 6-ish games or something like that to go. It's the most among safeties this season. The defense has only given up 14 touchdowns through the air. And so you're talking about Jordan Whitehead accounting for the overwhelming majority of that is something that you can't allow to continue to happen in his defense. He's also he's allowed the most touchdowns as a defender in the NFL. So that's already a huge minus, right? Immediately, my mindset went back to LaMarcus Joyner. We'll talk about why as well with one of the other statistics coming up. But he's also allowed 362 yards in coverage. That ranks 4th in his position, 18.1 yards per catch. That makes him 2nd worst in the NFL out of 50 safeties that have defended at least 15 passes. You know, you think about last year, LaMarcus Joyner was allowing somewhere in the realm of like 20.1, I think it was, yards per reception in 2022. Basically, anytime somebody was throwing his way, it was going to be a huge explosive play. And again, it's just something you really can't allow, right? This defense looks elite. There's some chinks in the armor, obviously, as we're talking about with Jordan Whitehead here, and obviously everything they've had to deal with the offense. But to think that they could still improve even further with a couple simple changes is crazy. And that's without even needing to go to the draft pool, to free agency to really add anybody. Now, again, getting into the missed tackle conversation, 15 missed tackles this year alone. That's 2nd most among safeties in the NFL, all for a 17.6% missed tackle rate. Extremely high. I haven't been able to calculate the average yet, but you know, off the top of my mind, I can guarantee you that's a fairly high number for safeties. You take a look at Ashtyn Davis, again, very minimal snaps, under 150. He's already had 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, a safety, which, by the way, is the only reason I would have tuned in to watch Falcons highlights, because we watched him obliterate a tight end and get a safety, in the opposing end zone. So it was something I love to see, especially since he's not a physically imposing guy, but he does have elite natural athletic qualities, which is why we coveted him so much when we initially drafted him. And it seems like he's finally being able to put a lot of that to use, right? You talk about him being able to go out there and hawk down an interception from Mahomes early in the year. And I've been a lot more impressed with how he's gone about getting takeaways this year. 2 tackles for loss to add on. He does have tackle concerns as well. He leads the team, I believe, with the 20% missed tackle rate. But again, minimal usage. So it's good and bad depending on how you look at it. But in a short sample size, numbers can get blown out of proportions, again, in a positive manner or a negative manner. Because, you know, statistically, the way math works and all that, right? If I only had 2 opportunities to defend you from making a touchdown in the end zone, if we're in the red zone, right? You score one, I score the other, I give up a 50% touchdown rate, right? Sounds terrible, but if you extrapolate that over, 100 snaps, whatever the case is, I'm sure that looks very minimal. So either way, just something to keep in mind. One of the things that I love the most, though, is significantly less yardage in his direction, right? Jordan Whitehead had a 18.1 yard per catch clip. Ashtyn Davis has a 6.1 yards per catch clip. And to top it off, he hasn't had a single penalty this year, and he hasn't allowed a touchdown in his coverage. And the penalties alone would sell it for me, right? We've been one of the most penalized teams in the NFL to a very frustrating degree, even though the majority shouldn't necessarily be on the defense. But every little bit helps. So let me know what you guys think. Would you actually consider promoting Ashtyn Davis to a starter for the final few games to see if you want to extend him and let him be the de facto starter next year? Excuse me. Or do you continue to let things play out with Jordan Whitehead? so that you basically don't tamper with how the defense has already been operating for the majority of the year. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Ultimately, I think on paper right now, Jordan Whitehead probably not getting an extension with us. Ashtyn Davis most likely is. You want to keep your core teamer around, and he's also starting to contribute on defense quite a bit. And then you have, again, think back to the offseason, the early competition between him and why am I forgetting his name? But our Florida safety that we brought in, right? And a lot of people took a look at preseason, took a look at the stats and everything. Things seemed like they were about on par with each other. Jets opted for Ashtyn Davis. But yeah, again, let me know what your guys' thoughts are, and I'll catch you again. Peace.